All right, Mr. Rogers 88 says, "How do you keep a straight face with Pantheon? We all know it's vaporware, and if it does come out, it will be hot garbage." And he says you're not trolling. If you're genuinely not trolling and that's a legitimate question, I'd be happy to answer that, because I think this is worth discussing. It's a very common sentiment, and if we just ignore that many people who feel that way, I don't think that's right, because there's a very legitimate discussion to be had there. I believe you. I believe that you want Pantheon to come out just as much as anyone else, and that you pledged. And I believe that you are feeling that way just because you have lost patience and you're just burnt out and tired of waiting. I believe you. And I believe that is the case for many people who feel that same way. So let's talk about that. Let's start with the term vaporware. It's funny. That term has always been funny to me, because the term vaporware originally is meant for a product that literally never existed, was all just talk. Nothing had, nothing had ever been done to actually make it a reality. It was just all a ruse, that's thus the vapor. There was no, these products, there was never actually any substance to them. It was all just an idea, right? Which we know is not literally the case with Pantheon, because I literally just played it 6 days ago, and I streamed it, and you can watch me play the game with hundreds of other people. But if we're starting pedantically, very literally, it is not vaporware, because there is a product there that people play. Yes, it is a limited amount of people, but it is a product, so it's not vaporware. Now, what I think probably what that term has been conflated to mean is that it is a product that will never become publicly available. I think it's probably, it's not a correct definition of the term, but I think that's probably how most people are using it. Which, again, I can put myself in a place where I can start to see why people would think that. I'll get to that in a little bit, though, because then you say, if it does come out, it will be hot garbage. Again, I very much disagree with that, because I literally just played it 6 days ago and had a lot of fun doing it, right? So that can be your opinion. It might not be for you. If you're just saying, I'm not trolling, that is a fact. The fact is that that is not a fact. That is an opinion. And that can be your opinion. That's fine, because Pantheon will not be for everyone. And I think that there are a lot of people, too, that maybe signed up, pledged really early, and as the game has evolved, as development moves on, and time goes on, it may have evolved into something that they didn't expect it to be, and maybe it is not the game for them anymore, and that's frustrating. And maybe that's the case for you, if that is true, that maybe it has just evolved into a game that is just not to your liking. And if that's the case, then I legitimately would feel bad for you. But that is going to be the reality for some people. That Pantheon is not even trying to be appealing to all types of gamers. And so maybe you do think it's hot garbage, but again, that's an opinion. That's not a fact, because at the very same time, there are a lot of people, and there will be a lot of people who enjoy it. It's just different styles, depending on what you like in an MMO. Truly, the question is, which is worth discussing, is, will Pantheon come out? Right? So again, this is a matter of what sort of information you have available to you. Because, again, Pantheon's development process is very unconventional, and it has been very chaotic at times. It is a small team undertaking an incredibly large project with very little funding proportionally, and that there is no playbook for that. That is an absolutely wild undertaking, right? And that has made it very unpredictable, to be honest. And so, obviously, we can't say anything for sure, but having the perspective that I do, having done a lot of work to understand their process and their team over the past 7 years now. 7 years I've been doing this. That's like a master's degree. That I am confident that they have the grit and the people in the right places and the momentum necessary to not stop until it is done. And I'm very confident about that. What I am not confident about is how long that would be. And that's really anybody's guess. There is no way to know that. Like I always say, just the fact of that, how crazy unusual of a story this is, this whole crowdfunding an MMO from the ground up sort of thing. Like, I just enjoy watching the story. You say you feel bad for people who follow the development because it's like getting sad. Again, that's your point of view. It all depends on how you view this. If you want to just watch an incredibly wild story unfold before your very eyes, that will probably never happen again. I mean, let's be honest. There will probably never be another MMO development story like this, right? There's from day one, like the whole crowdfunding an MMO thing on, starting on Kickstarter and going the way they did will probably never happen again. And so it's a pretty just unique opportunity to be able to watch this happen and watch them claw their way through this process. If you look at it that way, it's awesome. Like, it is seriously the most fascinating thing. And I feel sad for the people who are missing out on this. Isn't that interesting? Like, that's it. If you're only looking at the end goal destination because all you care about is just launch and just being able to play it at launch, well then, yeah, that's going to be depressing because your goal is an incredibly long-term goal, and that's your only metric, right? It all depends on what you're looking to get out of it. But the fact of the matter is that not everybody is looking to get the same thing out of it, right? Everybody has different opinions and perspectives and interests. There is a lot. One of the things that I love about the community and the people that show up here on a regular basis to the watch parties and stuff. It's a really unique community that we have about because we're just here for the journey. We're here on a journey together. And it honestly kind of feels like playing an MMO in that sense. That it's about the leveling up process. It's not about getting to max level. It's about the process of getting there with friends and the ups and downs that come with that, and the strategy and the that involves. That's basically what we're looking at here as the developers take their take their journey of reaching launch day, you know? So when you kind of change your frame of mind, it becomes a lot more enjoyable. Yeah. And that's just true with life. And I genuinely, I'm not joking when I say I feel bad for people who are incapable of changing their frame of mind to be able to look at things differently, right? Because then that's just sad. That's sad. So that's where I'm coming from personally. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense as to why we're here. Chamomile chimes in and says, when will they have a release date? Well, because of that crowd-funded nature of the development, there really isn't any way to say even like when the release date will be. Traditional game development, at a very basic level, traditional game development, a studio gets a chunk of money. They pitch a game to like a publisher or something. And if the publisher likes it, they get a big chunk of money right off the bat, or maybe a promise, a contract of like, we will pay you X amount of money over this X period of time. But they essentially have this guarantee that they'll have the money needed to, you know, get the staff that is needed to get it done in a reasonable amount of time, and they can plan out. They already know how much money they're going to have, right? So they can plan out. All right, if we have this amount of people, and this is the scope of our game, we know that okay, with this amount of people, it will take us this amount of time to reach this milestone, et cetera, and they can plan out further in advance. And that's how you get traditional game development. It says, okay, you know, we should be done in this amount of years or this amount of months or whatever. Now, obviously, even in traditional game development, a lot of times those estimates are wrong because unexpected things come up. Either people leave the company or maybe they hit some real like technological roadblock that takes way longer than they were expecting to overcome. Things come up, games get delayed all the time. But in crowdfunded development like this, they don't always know when the next big influx of money is going to come because it is depending on pledges from people, which is fairly unpredictable. And then, and investors, like private investors, money from them as well. But again, that's also something that's like, you can't count on it. You don't have like a contract with a publisher that you know for sure you're going to have this amount of money over X amount of time, right? And so with that, they can only plan out much shorter spans of time, right? And they have a certain amount of runway, but it's not enough to be able to say, okay, we should have it all done in this window of time. So they have to have kind of different contingencies, different plans depending on what rate of funding they get. And so which they don't know. They have different plans lined up, but they don't know which one they're going to have to take because they don't know what rate the money is going to come in. Right? That is the fuel that keeps the fire going, is funding that allows them to hire more developers, et cetera, right? So that's a relatively short answer as to why. Just the very nature, again, that's what makes this so weird. You like it because this sort of thing is unusual, this crowdfunding nature. You talk to some people, like, what do you mean they don't know when they're going to be done? Well, it's like this is crowdfunded. This is grassroots. It's not even, and it's not Ashes of Creation crowdfunded where they have their CEO who can just fund it out of his own pocket, basically. This is literally like they don't know what rate the money is going to come in over long periods of time. Could happen quickly. It could take a long time. I think alpha, when they reach alpha, then it will become a lot more clear. If alpha goes well, that's like the great proving ground. You open up the gates to 10,000 plus people, for sure, at the very least, that's going to be really telling. And that's, telling to the developers and also to publishers that they're trying to land deals with, publishers, investors. If the publishers and investors see alpha as a success, and if there's a lot of buzz around it because alpha is good, then publishers will see, okay, there's a viable audience here. Like, this is a viable product. They've proven that there's a viable product, and let's help them get it across the finish line. Alpha will be very telling because if that doesn't happen and they don't get that big influx of money, then it's going to be a long, very, very, very long and difficult road ahead of them. That will be kind of the great fork in the road, so to speak, right? That's why all eyes are on alpha right now. That's why so much care is being put into making sure alpha is a success, because it will more or less be the make it or break it point for the project. But until that, you can't say definitively like which way the product is going to go. I mean, you never can say anything definitively, but really with any sort of confidence as to the timeline. Mr. Rogers says, can you explain how they'll get investors when alpha looks like it was made in 2002? Shareholders won't invest in a game that looks so bad, and that's my opinion, yes, but it's shared by many. That's your opinion as a gamer. Investors aren't looking at it from the same perspective as a gamer. Because, yes, they absolutely invest in... They all the time invest in games that look bad, because visuals are not everything. Visuals are the superficial level, the thing that gamers care about. But investors and publishers are looking at it from a business perspective. They're looking at the long-term longevity of the game. They're looking at player retention. They're looking at, where does this, what does this game bring to the table that is unique to the market? What are the systems? Things like that, the deeper things. True investors invest in games that make them money. It's been stated by many VR execs that this game is made for EQ gamers. They have not said that. That is not a true statement. That pool of people is super small. You're right that the pool of people is super small, but I can literally just whip out the library right now. And I don't want to single you out. I'm not trying to rag on you, but I don't think he's a troll. This is a legitimate sentiment that a lot of people have, which is why I feel like it's worth discussing, because I think a lot of people are just frustrated, and that frustration prevents them from being able to understand these things. Just like the library says, if you have limited your exposure to information, your picture of reality suffers. And that's what I see happening all the time, that people have limited their exposure to information about the game, and that causes their picture of its reality to suffer, right? This is case in point. It's hilarious that you say it's been stated by many VR execs that this game is made for EQ gamers. They have not said that. That is part. EQ gamers are part of the target audience, but not exclusively the audience. Let's watch a clip. So, Sleepy Frog, yes, this has been discussed over and over again. But again, you got to think, not everybody watches all of these videos all the way through. Most people don't. That's why it's worth having these conversations, especially since it's complex. It's just a rule of life, again, is that these complex topics, which crowdfunded MMO development is an extremely complex topic. Complex topics are insanely difficult to convey accurately to large amounts of people simultaneously, right? It takes multiple conversations to be able to explain these sorts of things in a way that most people can grasp. Again, this whole concept of crowdfunded MMO development in the grand scheme of game development is a pretty small fraction that has not been around for long enough for people to really see how it works. Again, some people don't care, and that's fine. If you don't care, then you don't care. You don't need to listen. What I'm interested in is the people who they do care, but they don't get it. But they want to. You know, if they genuinely want to, even if they're frustrated, they're all like fed up and just emotional about it because they've lost their patience. That's fine, but I think that that's a key difference. You know, yes, some people want to troll, but I think that's just a subset. And there are some people that might seem like trolls, but really they are just upset and they want to get it, but they don't know how. And it involves it. I think it benefits the entire community to not just be like, oh well, they've already talked about that before, so clearly you're not even trying. You're not even trying to be genuine because they've talked about it before. It's like, yes, they have, but it needs to be said multiple times, you know, before it really clicks. So, talking about the target audience. Mr. Rogers says, every person who I've talked to that were or are excited for Pantheon are or current or ex EQ players. That's your sample size. I believe that. That's, you know, your circle. But again, that is not the entirety of Pantheon's target audience. And you saying that a majority of people will enjoy EQ game aspects is a lie. I mean, no, I don't think anybody has even claimed that Pantheon is going to be this mass market smash success blockbuster Fortnite level. Everybody plays it. It's not. I know, but nobody is claiming that. Nobody is aiming for that. But that's not what is needed to be a success, right? We need to not think in binary terms where it's either black and white, where it's either, you know, it's a game of King of the Hill. Either you reach World of Warcraft level numbers or you are a disaster, right? You are a failure. You should have never even tried because you didn't reach World of Warcraft level of success. We can't think in those terms because that's just not reality. There's so much gray space in between. A measure of success, asking Mr. Rogers, what is a measure of success then? Measure of success is if a game is profitable and is able to sustain a community for an extended period of time. That's all it takes. That doesn't actually take that many people if you have a lean, small company like this. A company that only has maybe 35 people on their payroll and is very judicious in how they spend their money. It actually does not take a large player base to be able to sustain that. Success is subjective. But a generally accepted definition, like if you create a game and it is able to stay online and make the company money profitably for years on end, how is that not a success, right? That's all that they're really going for, is to just put a game out into the world for the people who enjoy that style of game. Yes, EQ players are involved in that, but as we'll see from Joppa, I'm not going to step on his words, but there are other people who fall in that category as well. You know, for those people who enjoy this style of game, to play and enjoy for a long time. All there is to it, right? Can we agree on that? Yeah, Velas says, yeah, I don't care if it's profitable, care if it's fun, and manages not to get shut down for the duration. Well, I get, yeah, the company primarily is, you know, they need it to be profitable, but really it kind of is one and the same, where you say, if you want it to not get shut down for the duration of your playthrough, then you do care if it's profitable, because the way that it doesn't get shut down is by being profitable. You see what I mean? But yes, as players, the primary thing that we care about is having fun, right? And it's one of those things where, and the devs seem to get that too, that the way that you get play, like a game being fun is that is the single most important thing, right? That is the catalyst for all of this, right? You think about the cycle. If you if you make a game that is genuinely fun for an established audience, and then people have fun with it, then they will play it, and they'll keep playing it, and they will pay a subscription to play it. So that makes the game money, that makes it profitable, and because it's profitable, it's able to stay online for longer, and more people play it, etc., etc. That is the life cycle. But it absolutely hinges on it being fun, and in a way that people want to keep coming back for it more and more over long periods of time, making it a world that they can actually exist in and be happy in for long periods of time, as opposed to you get some of these really like predatory publishers where it's like, all right, we're just going to make a game. We're not going to think about long-term player retention. We're not going to design systems that keep people coming back more and more. We're just going to get them in and, put all these microtransactions in and stuff to get as much money out of them as quickly as possible. And if they get tired of it and they leave, then we don't care because we got the money up front. That's bad. That's bad. But that's not the goal here. Right. So let's hear the demographic that Pantheon's shooting for.
Like when I think about my 12-year-old that is, knee deep into Fortnite and games like that, as much as he loves seeing the things that I do, and as much as he loves, the idea that his dad works on video games and things like that, would he ever really want to play something like Pantheon? I think that age group and teenagers in general, that age bracket, I think is an interesting one. Where my son, I could be wrong, pleasantly surprised, but for those that have really cut their teeth and grown up on that very competitive, fast-paced type of gameplay, I don't know. But even though that sounds maybe like a downer answer, as I've thought about this a little bit, I'm actually very encouraged when I think about Pantheon's palatability. And I'll try to break down as best I can why, and it's going to go back to some of those words I mentioned earlier, because the reality is this. I think that people play video games and invest time in playing video games for reasons that don't have anything to do with pace or fast-paced versus slow-paced. I think people play video games because of how well that particular game does those three things I mentioned earlier. How well it establishes its loop, how well it communicates and creates avenues for progression, and what kind of prestige that it awards, what sense of prestige that it awards. And games that do that well, I think, can resonate with just about anybody, regardless of age group, regardless of background, whatever. And I'll give you some examples of why I think that. Take something like a Warzone, for example, or a Modern Warfare 2. Warzone is the most hectic, frantic. You're sliding around on your butt everywhere you go. You're spamming your ground slide. It is not anything that appeals to me personally, but that doesn't matter because there are a ton of people that play it. It's a good game for what it is. But I know people who main Warzone who also love Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov. Escape from Tarkov has become one of my top games of all time. I absolutely love it. And that's not being personally a big first-person shooter person. I've never really been into them that much, but I love Tarkov. But what's fascinating to me is how you can have people that love Warzone and love Tarkov. One of them is frantic, it's fast-paced, it's chaotic, it's just flinch motions everywhere you turn, like it is insane. The other one is slow, it's steady, some would argue a bit clunky. It is just on the total opposite end of the spectrum, and yet they're both incredibly satisfying games to play because they both do those three things really, really well. So when I think about Pantheon and I think about its, how is it going to resonate with someone who is more used to and typically trends towards faster paced games, I think the key is ultimately that we do those three things well. If the loop that exists, and the loop simply means like, what am I doing when I log into the game? Is there something attainable? Is there something coherent? Is there something meaningful? Is there some kind of like coherent, congruent thought that I have about what I'm going to do, what I want to do, and how well that loop ultimately starts and progresses and closes itself. The second is the progression, and that is, am I getting a sense of satisfaction as I go through this loop? Am I accomplishing things? Am I accumulating things? Am I acquiring things? Am I becoming more powerful? Am I becoming more capable? And then thirdly is the prestige, which is, at different points throughout that process, am I able to, in a sense, flex myself? Am I able to show off in certain manners what I am capable of doing because of what I've accomplished? And I think, again, if those three things are done well, and then the ultimate capstone on all of that being, is it fun? Do you genuinely have fun? Or are you just deeply invested in one of those three things? Is one of those three things, one of those three hooks in you really hard? Let's accomplish all three. Let's work hard to create a coherent loop that players can coherently understand and get behind whenever they log in to play the game. Let's make sure that there is ample vertical and horizontal paths of progression to make sure that that hook is robust. And let's make sure that there's opportunity for that prestige to be communicated to other players. And with those three things working in harmony, let's make sure the game's fun. Let's make sure that we are paying attention to whether the game is fun to play. We accomplish those things, and to the degree that we accomplish those things, I believe Pantheon is able to resonate with just about anybody.
I love that explanation. It was a long explanation, but I think it's worth pointing out, right? That it's not about just, let's reach out to the EverQuest community and try to give them, a new game to play. It's more about the design philosophies and the values that yes, there are some overlap there. Like that is, part of what made EverQuest such a hit in its day. But there are, you can get some of those values that are still very relevant in today's day and age. Like it's just part of just tapping into like the human desire for progression and prestige and that sort of thing. It's still very relevant today because you can find those values in a ton of other games too. So it's about doing those things well and not just, let's just copy these mechanics from EQ because this is what EQ players like. Again, that's a long explanation. If you want to dig deeper into this, again, go to the library of Pantheon, do a Control F search for target audience. There's literally 21 different quotes of them talking about exactly this, about why people still think Pantheon is an EverQuest clone. The target audience, the whole concept of niche. Like there are, in fact, a lot of people. There are a lot of examples of devs talking about how it is not an EQ clone, right? Not only targeting the EverQuest audience. One last thing, because you bring up an important point, Mr. Rogers, about when it takes 8 years to get to pre-alpha and there's no horizon in sight, them baiting us with the whole, we're fully funded, but additional funding will accelerate our development, is such hogwash. That is a carrot on a stick. The main thing there is that they're not claiming to be fully funded. They have not. That is a unfortunate myth that has persisted through some misunderstandings that I myself fell for a while back in being under the impression that the project was fully funded. But that is not the case, and it has not been the case, right? They've specifically said that they are not fully funded. Again, using the library. January 2021. Oh, actually, it was in the newsletter. This is not full funding, right? And that has continued to be the case since then. That's just one example off the top of my head, right? But they're not fully funded. So it's not like, oh yeah, they haven't claimed to be. Right? I can see where you would feel like that is just kind of like a carrot on the stick if it's like, oh well, yeah, we're fully funded, but yeah, give us some more. You know, that's not the case. This is literally grassroots crowdfunding. That is the lifeblood. But that said, if you don't feel like supporting it financially yourself, then don't. You don't have to. Like that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I would encourage you not to. If you don't feel like that's right for you, then that's fine. Just don't. That's really all there is to it.